So back in 1970, there was this terrifying rumor that basically swept the globe.
Oh, yeah, the Brussels thing.
Right. It started as a whisper and then just quickly morphed into this massive international panic. People literally thought there was a giant, all-knowing supercomputer sitting in Brussels, Belgium.
Which is just, it's wild to think about now.
Exactly. And the rumor was that it was tracking the financial transactions of, every single person on Earth, getting ready to assign every human being a permanent, unremovable barcode.
Right, right.
And they called this computer the Beast. But the absolute wildest part of this entire story, that late 20th century panic over a Belgian IT system, was actually born from a 2,000-year-old math puzzle.
A puzzle meant to secretly mock an ancient Roman emperor, no less?
Exactly.
It's really a stunning example of how ancient symbols mutate over time. The beast is one of those cultural touchstones that almost everyone recognizes.
Oh, for sure.
But almost no one actually understands it. It's been completely divorced from its original historical context.
Yeah. And getting that context back is basically our mission today. We are going to shortcut you, the listener, to being really well informed about one of the most culturally pervasive and wildly misunderstood symbols in human history.
It's going to be a fun one.
Definitely. We're pulling from an encyclopedic breakdown of the beast from the Book of Revelation. We'll look at the original text and then explore the fascinating and honestly sometimes bizarre ways people have weaponized it over the last 2 millennia.
Yeah, weaponized is definitely the right word there.
So, okay, let's unpack this, but before we dive into the text, I want to make something very clear to you listening. We are impartially exploring the historical and theological interpretations of these sources.
Right, we're looking at the history.
Exactly. We aren't here to declare any single view as the ultimate truth. We're simply examining the original material to understand how it works and, how it's been utilized.
Which is an essential approach. I mean, when we deal with apocalyptic literature, like the Book of Revelation, we have to recognize that these texts operate kind of like historical mirrors.
What do you mean by historical mirrors?
Well, people in different eras, they look into this bizarre imagery and they see their own greatest fears reflected right back at them, their own political enemies, their own societal anxieties.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so to really understand the interpretations over the centuries, you have to understand the psychology of the people reading it at that specific time.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's look at the mirror itself first. Before we can get into the 666 of it all, what are we actually looking at in Revelation chapters 12 and 13?
Well, the text is...
Because honestly, going through the sources, the very first thing that shocked me is that we aren't talking about one single monster. Like the pop culture image of just the beast is actually completely incomplete.
Yeah, it really is. The text actually presents a trio. It's a triumvirate of evil, basically.
Okay.
The narrative begins with the dragon, and the text explicitly identifies this dragon as Satan, the ancient serpent. Now, the dragon is the ultimate source of power here, but he mostly stays in the background, operating behind the scenes.
Like a shadow CEO or something.
Basically, yeah. He delegates his absolute authority to the next figure, which is the beast from the sea.
Right, and the sea beast is the one most people casually refer to as the Antichrist.
Even though the text of Revelation never actually uses that specific word.
Wait, really? It doesn't say Antichrist?
Nope, not in Revelation.
Oh, wow. Well, anyway, it's a wildly visceral image. It rises out of the ocean, and it's this terrifying chimera. It has the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion.
Right.
It has 7 heads and 10 horns with crowns on its horns. And crucially, the text notes that one of its heads has a fatal wound that has been miraculously healed.
Yes, that detail is incredibly important later on.
And this miraculous recovery bewilders the whole world, right? It causes humanity to worship it. It rules for exactly 42 months, demanding absolute allegiance and making war on the saints.
And then you have the third figure in the trio, the beast from the earth.
Okay, the earth beast.
Which is later referred to as the false prophet. Now, at first glance, it seems a little less intimidating. He just has 2 horns like a lamb.
But the text says it speaks like a dragon.
Exactly. Its entire function is essentially to be the public relations machine for the sea beast. It performs these massive signs and wonders like calling fire down from heaven just to convince humanity to build an image of the sea beast and worship it.
So it's the ultimate hype man.
Pretty much. And, most famously, this earth beast is the one that sets up the economic system. It forces everyone, rich and poor, to receive a mark on their right hand or their forehead in order to buy or sell anything.
Man, looking at how these three interact, it's basically a twisted, dark, cinematic universe, or like an unholy anti-trinity.
That's a great way to put it.
You've got the dragon acting as the Dark Father, the sea beast with its miraculously healed fatal wound mimicking a resurrection, and the earth beast acting like a dark spirit whose only job is pointing everyone toward the sea beast.
It's a complete parody of the divine.
But I have to ask about the specific anatomy here. The leopard, the bear, the lion. Why those specific animals?
Yeah.
I mean, is this just ancient drug-induced surrealism, or is it a very deliberate political cartoon for the first century?
What's fascinating here is that it is absolutely deliberate. A first-century audience who was versed in Hebrew scriptures, they would have caught the reference instantly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a direct callback to the Old Testament book of Daniel, chapter 7.
Okay, what happens in Daniel?
In Daniel's vision, he sees 4 separate beasts coming out of the sea: a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a terrifying 4th beast with 10 horns.
Oh, wow. Those exact animals.
Those exact animals. And Daniel explicitly explains the mechanics of his vision. These animals represent successive earthly empires that subjugate God's people.
Okay.
Historically, scholars map Daniel's line to Babylon, the bear to Medo-Persia, and the leopard to Alexander the Great's Greek Empire.
Oh, I see. So John, the author of Revelation, isn't just pulling scary monsters out of thin air.
Not at all.
He's taking the well-known symbols of historical oppressive empires from Daniel and literally fusing them together into one ultimate composite Voltron of a super beast.
That is exactly what he's doing. By giving the sea beast the mouth of Babylon, the feet of Medo-Persia, and the body of Greece, John is signaling something huge.
Let's get the signal.
He's saying that whatever this new beast represents, it is the horrifying culmination of all worldly, imperial, oppressive powers just rolled into one massive threat.
Okay, if we follow that logic, that this is a coded political cartoon about earthly empires, it means the original first century audience must have known exactly who they were looking at.
They absolutely did.
Which brings us to the first major school of interpretation in our sources, which is preterism. This is the view that when John wrote this, he wasn't looking thousands of years into the future.
Right.
He was writing about events happening in his present day, events that are ancient history to us.
Correct. The preterist view argues that the sea beast is a heavily coded critique of the Roman Empire, and more specifically, the Emperor Nero.
Okay, Nero, how do they get there?
Well, the text gives us clues. It says the beast's 7 heads are 7 mountains and 7 kings. In the ancient world, Rome was universally known as the city on 7 hills.
Right.
And if you count the Roman emperors, starting from Julius or Augustus, Nero fits the timeline perfectly as the 6th king, the one reigning during the earliest, most intense persecution of the Christian church.
Okay, but what about that specific detail of the fatal head wound that gets miraculously healed? How does that fit Nero?
There are 2 main historical mechanisms at play there. First, Rome went through massive systemic destabilization after Nero committed suicide in AD 68.
Wait, how did he die?
He stabbed himself in the throat. So literally a fatal wound by a sword.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And after that, the empire plunged into the year of the 4 emperors, which was this brutal, chaotic civil war. To the rest of the world, it looked like the Roman beast was dead.
But it wasn't.
No. Vespasian took control, established a new dynasty, and the empire miraculously recovered its iron grip. The beast came back to life.
That's fascinating. And you said there was a second mechanism.
Yes, the second angle is a widespread myth of the era called the Nero Redivivus legend.
Redivivus?
Basically, Nero reborn. Many people firmly believed Nero didn't actually die. They thought he faked his death, fled east to Parthia, and was going to return with a massive army to retake Rome.
That sounds terrifying for the early church.
Exactly. John is likely playing on that very real cultural terror.
That makes a lot of sense. And earlier we mentioned the beast rules and makes war for exactly 42 months.
Yes.
If I do the math on Nero's reign weight. The Roman historian Tacitus documents that Nero's horrific scapegoating and persecution of Christians started right after the Great Fire of Rome in AD 64.
Right.
And he had them wrapped in animal hides and torn by dogs or burned as human torches in his gardens. It was awful. But that started in AD 64, and Nero died in June of AD 68.
Do the math.
AD 64 to the summer of 68 is exactly 3.5 years, 42 months.
It perfectly aligns. The historical footprint matches the apocalyptic imagery seamlessly.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room, the famous number, 666. If the beast is literally Emperor Nero, how does that number fit?
Well, you have to look at how numbers worked back then.
Right, in the ancient world, they didn't have separate numbers like we do today, so they are doing math with the alphabet. Let me guess. If you spell Nero's name, the sum of those letters gives us our number.
Precisely. It's an ancient practice called gematria, where every letter has a numerical value.
Okay.
And the author of Revelation literally commands the reader, he says, calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man.
So it's an outright math problem.
Yes, if you take Nero's formal Greek title, Neron Caesar, and transliterate it into Hebrew characters, which a first-century Jewish Christian audience would naturally do to hide the code from Roman authorities, you get the letters Nun, Resh, Vav, Nun, Quof, Samek, Resh.
And if you add those specific Hebrew values together, let me check the notes. 5206, 5100, 6200, you get exactly 666.
You do. It's a perfect match.
But hold on, I have to push back here. Because there was a detail in the sources that completely threw a wrench in this for me.
Okay, what was it?
Here's where it gets really interesting. The oldest preserved manuscript we have of the Book of Revelation, Papyrus 115, does not say 666. It says the number of the beast is 616, 616.
Yes, it does.
So dropping the N to make the math work feels a bit convenient. Are we sure modern scholars aren't just forcing the math to fit the bad guy of the decade the same way conspiracy theorists do today?
It's a very fair question. But Papyrus 115 actually proves the code was real rather than debunking it.
How does it prove it?
You have to think about how the cipher functions across different languages. If you are a Latin-speaking Christian, you don't pronounce it Neron Caesar, you say Nero Caesar.
Okay, sure.
If you transliterate the Latin spelling Nero Caesar into Hebrew, you drop that final N. And the Hebrew letter Nun is worth exactly 50. So the mathematical value drops from 666 to 616.
Oh, wow.
The math actively adjusts based on the local language being used. It's an ancient, localized cryptogram designed specifically to point at Nero no matter what language you're reading the book in.
Okay, I retract my skepticism. That is an incredibly elegant cipher.
It really is brilliant.
So for the first century reader, the mystery was entirely solved. The beast was the machinery of the Roman Empire, and Nero was the literal, terrifying face of it.
Right.
The message was simply, resist the imperial cult, do not compromise your faith, even if it costs your life.
Exactly. That was the immediate comfort and warning to those early believers.
But if the math was a localized cipher for a first-century Roman emperor, the threat should have died with Nero. We shouldn't still be talking about it.
True, but human nature doesn't work like that.
Exactly. When later generations experienced trauma or oppression, they looked at this text and assumed it must be talking about their enemy. Which brings us to the historicist interpretation. History essentially becomes a Rorschach test, and people continuously recycle the beast to target whoever they are fighting against right now.
Because there is a deep psychological mechanism at play here. As humans, we have an innate need to categorize our adversaries not just as politically wrong, but as cosmically evil.
Oh, that makes sense.
If your enemy is a rival nation or a different political party, that's just a human conflict. But if you can successfully map the symbolism of the beast onto your enemy, you elevate the conflict.
It becomes a holy war.
Yes, you are now fighting a holy war. You are definitively on the side of the angels, and any action against the enemy is justified. It is the ultimate psychological tool for delegitimizing the opposition.
And the sources show this happening constantly. Like the Protestant reformers, Martin Luther, John Calvin, they didn't see the beast as an ancient Roman emperor at all.
No, they didn't.
They viewed the beast and the false prophet as the papacy in Rome. They saw the political and religious dominance of the Catholic Church as the ultimate fulfillment of the prophecy. And they even had their own math for it.
They did. Building on this historicist view, later groups like the Seventh-day Adventists popularized the calculation using a purported Latin title for the Pope.
Right, Vicarius Filii Dei.
Exactly, which translates to Vice-Regent of the Son of God. If you take only the letters in that title that correspond to Roman numerals, V is 5, I is 1, C is 100, L is 50, D is 500, and you add them all up.
It comes out to 666.
Perfectly.
Though, I mean, our Catholic sources, like the apologist Jimmy Akin, are very quick to point out that Vicarius Filii Dei is not and never has been an official title of the Pope.
Right. It's not historically accurate to call it a papal title.
But that didn't stop the calculation from becoming incredibly influential anyway. The symbol is just so adaptable. Medieval Christians frequently identified the beast with the rise of Islam. Some Protestant groups linked the Earth Beast, the one with lamb horns that speaks like a dragon to the United States, arguing it looked innocent like a lamb, but acted with the imperial tower of a dragon.
The elasticity of the symbol is truly remarkable.
It is. But I want to dig into why it's so elastic. There was an example in the notes about the New Deal era in America. In the 1930s, some evangelical ministers were aggressively preaching that labor unions, specifically the CIO, were the sign of the beast.
Yes, the union anxiety.
Now, to me, today, a labor union negotiating for weekend breaks seems miles away from a seven-headed sea monster. How does that psychological leap happen?
Well, you have to look at the societal anxiety of the 1930s. Rapid industrialization and the massive expansion of government power during the New Deal made many rural religious Americans feel profoundly out of control.
Like things were moving too fast.
Right. They felt they were losing their individuality to a massive secular machine. And the unions required membership dues and a union card to work in certain industries.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. To a nervous minister looking through the lens of Revelation, the idea that you could not buy or sell your labor without this specific secular market, it felt terrifyingly identical to the economic coercion of the beast.
They were projecting their economic anxiety onto the text,
Precisely.
which makes you incredibly susceptible to misinformation. And that finally brings us back to the hook of our discussion, the absolute strangest theory in the entire stack of sources, the Beast of Brussels.
Ah, yes.
I mean, how does an ancient biblical prophecy mutate into a Belgian supercomputer?
The mechanics of this are hilarious,
Yeah.
but also a pretty sobering look at how information cascades. The Beast of Brussels was a pure urban legend.
That's totally made up.
Completely. It originated in 1970 as a marketing campaign for a Christian fiction novel and movie called The Rapture.
Okay.
The author, Joe Musser, mocked up several fake newspaper clippings to use as promotional material. These fictional ads claimed a giant three-story supercomputer in Belgium was preparing to track the global population.
So it was just a viral marketing campaign before the internet existed. People saw these fake newspapers, lacked the context that it was an ad for a movie, and just absorbed it as literal, terrifying news.
Precisely. Other newsletters and magazines picked up the fake clippings and reported them as fact. Before long, you had widespread, genuine panic that the Beast of Revelation was a literal mainframe sitting in Western Europe.
That's incredible.
It shows how easily fear, combined with a lack of source checking, allows a powerful symbol to spread misinformation.
It's the 1970s version of sharing a fake news article on social media.
It really is.
So we've watched the beast evolve from a terrifying first-century Roman emperor to the Pope to labor unions to an accidental viral marketing campaign. But how do modern thinkers approach this today?
Well, looking at the sources, there are two major camps left.
Right, futurism and idealism. Futurism seems to be what most people are familiar with today.
Yes, futurism is the dominant view in modern American evangelicalism, and it is driven by a specific theological framework called dispensationalism.
Dispensational.
Right, which became highly popular in the 19th and 20th centuries. Dispensationalism divides human history into distinct eras, or dispensations, and looks forward to a literal future 7-year period of tribulation.
Okay, so they expect it to happen later.
Exactly. So futurists read Revelation 13, and they do not see Nero, and they do not see a metaphor. They see a literal, physical Antichrist who will one day emerge to lead a revived Roman Empire like some sort of future global coalition.
Right.
And they believe he will institute a literal, physical mark of the beast technology required for global commerce.
Right. That's the view that inspires the entire Left Behind industry, the end-of-the-world novels, the movies, the constant speculation about microchips or barcodes. It is highly literal.
Very literal.
But the final major perspective in our sources, the idealist view, goes the exact opposite direction. They don't think the beast is a specific guy in the past, and they don't think it's a specific guy in the future.
No, idealism approaches Revelation fundamentally as an allegory. In this view, the beast from the sea isn't a single person. It is a timeless symbol.
Representing what?
Representing any human system, state, or kingdom that sets itself up in opposition to God and demands absolute allegiance from its citizens.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yes, it was the Roman Empire in the 1st century, but it's also modern totalitarianism.
Yeah.
It is extreme imperialism. It is exploitative commerce and materialism.
So if the sea beast is the corrupt state, what is the earth beast, the PR machine, in this view?
The earth beast represents the cultural, economic, and religious ideologies that convince people to blindly support that corrupt state. It's the propaganda wing.
Got it.
It is anything that convinces you to trade your moral compass in exchange for physical security or economic prosperity.
Interesting. But how does an idealist explain the math? How does 666 fit if it's not a cipher for a specific name?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, idealists reject the gematria completely.
Just throw the math out.
Completely. They argue that numbers in apocalyptic literature are qualitative, not quantitative. They are highly symbolic.
Okay, break that down for me.
In biblical numerology, 7 is the number of divine completeness or perfection.
Right.
God creates the world in 7 days. The week is complete.
Right.
Therefore, the number 6 represents something that is incomplete. It strives for perfection, but fundamentally falls short.
Oh, I see.
So 666, 3 sixes represents ultimate incompleteness. The beast bears the hallmarks of truth. It creates a miraculous counterfeit of the divine to deceive you, but it is ultimately a flawed human system. It is completely incomplete.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, because if the beast is just the system, if it's just corporate greed or manipulative government or materialism, isn't that a bit of a letdown?
A letdown.
I mean, compared to a fiery apocalypse with a 7-headed sea monster and fire coming from the sky, exploitative commerce sounds like a pretty boring Tuesday.
Well, it might lack the cinematic flair of a Hollywood disaster movie, but I would argue it is vastly more relevant to you, the listener.
Oh, so
Think about it. If the beast is just some supervillain waiting in the distant future, you don't have to worry about it today. If it's a Roman emperor who died by his own hand 2,000 years ago, it's just an interesting history lesson.
right.
But if the beast represents the corrupt, omnipresent systems of power that demand our unthinking allegiance right now, well, that is a warning you have to reckon with every single day.
You're saying it's asking us to constantly look in the mirror.
Exactly. It asks you to critically examine the water you swim in. What modern systems, what algorithms, what political ideologies are you blindly following? Where are you compromising your core ethics just to buy and sell comfortably in the modern world?
That's heavy.
In the idealist view, the mark of the beast isn't a microchip, it's a mindset. It's a timeless warning about surrendering your autonomy to systems that do not have your best interests at heart.
That is a profoundly challenging way to look at it. So, to summarize the journey we've been on, we started with a terrifying, multi-headed sea monster from a first-century text.
We did.
We decoded a localized mathematical cryptogram pointing directly at Emperor Nero and his brutal persecution of the early church. We watched history weaponize that exact same symbol against everyone, from Protestant reformers to 1930s labor unions to a fictional Belgian IT system.
All right.
And finally, we arrived at this view of the beast as a timeless, profound metaphor for any corrupt system of power that demands our soul.
It is a masterclass in how an ancient text can maintain its psychological power across millennia, precisely because the human struggle against oppressive, absolute power never really ends.
It really doesn't. But before we sign off, I have to leave you listening with one final, fascinating historical footnote from our sources to mull over. It completely flips everything we've just talked about on its head.
I know where this is going.
For 2,000 years, everyone in history has been desperately trying to avoid the beast. Nobody wants to be associated with 6666 as the ultimate smear, except for one guy.
Aleister Crowley.
Yes, the infamous early 20th century British occultist Aleister Crowley. While everyone else was pointing fingers and calling their political enemies the beast, Crowley leaned all the way in.
He really did.
He literally claimed the title for himself. He took the phrase the great beast and translated it into Greek to Megatherion. And he didn't choose Greek by accident.
Nope, he knew exactly what he was doing.
He did it because of a practice called isopsophy, which is the exact same concept as Hebrew gematria, but using the Greek alphabet. When you calculate the numerical value of Megatherion in Greek, it adds up perfectly to 666.
He engineered it.
Exactly. Crowley wore it as a badge of honor. It is the ultimate subversion of the text. It shows how a symbol meant as the ancient world's ultimate warning of absolute evil could, centuries later, be co-opted by someone else as a tool for spiritual rebellion and, honestly, incredibly edgy personal branding.
A symbol of ultimate oppression became, for one man, a symbol of extreme personal liberation. It just proves that once a symbol enters the cultural bloodstream, you can never truly control how it will be used.
You really can't. Which brings us right back to the heavy metal album covers, the horror movies, and the pop culture phenomenon. The symbol has taken on a life entirely its own, far beyond the shores of Patmos, where John first wrote it down. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been great.
Keep questioning the symbols around you, think critically about the systems of power you engage with every day, and maybe double-check your sources before you believe a viral panic about a Belgian supercomputer.